Tropical cyclone Ita, developing off the far north Queensland coast, is expected to intensify into a Category 4 storm this morning. 10 Eyewitness News weather presenter Josh Holt joins us live now from Cairns. Josh, good morning. Obviously quite calm there now, but we're hearing that Ita could be the biggest storm since Yassi.
Good morning, Norla. That is certainly correct. It will be the biggest cyclone to hit the Queensland coast since Yassi. At the moment, severe tropical cyclone Ita is a Category 3 system with winds gusting near the centre at 220 kilometres per hour. But as you mentioned, we are anticipating it to go to a Category 4 system sometime this afternoon, which means wind speeds between 225 and 279 kilometres per hour. And that's why the Bureau have now released a cyclone warning from Cape Grenville all the way down to Cape Tribulation, and a cyclone watch from Cape Trib all the way through to Cairns, including 200 kilometres of the adjacent inland. We do expect the system to make landfall late Friday night as a very powerful severe tropical cyclone, a Category 4 system with very destructive winds and some very heavy rain, upward totals over a 4-day period of 400 and 500 millimetres. That's half a metre of water and no doubt plenty of flash flooding. The other big risks throughout the far north tropical coast will be a storm surge and no doubt inundation of low-lying areas with seawater. So a very dangerous scenario over the next 48 hours, and those warnings are in place, and we urge everyone, if you are planning to evacuate, to do it as soon as possible. Nuala?
Yeah, make early preparations. Thanks, Josh, for your time this morning.
We are now joined by 10 Eyewitness News weather expert Josh Holt, who is in Cairns. Josh, things at the moment certainly looking pretty ominous. How destructive could this cyclone be?
Good morning, Matt. Well, it certainly doesn't get any worse than this. We have a Category 5 severe tropical cyclone barrelling towards the far north coast of Queensland with wind speeds near the centre right now at 295 kilometres per hour. Now, at the moment, the system is situated 205 kilometres north-northeast of Cooktown. It is moving in a south-southwesterly direction at around about 8 kilometres per hour. Now, we do have cyclone warnings in place from Cape Sidmouth all the way through to Innisfail, and a cyclone watch has also been issued from Innisfail down to areas of Cardwell. Now, as you would imagine, plenty of the residents across the far north coast have been preparing for this system. This was Palm Cove just a few hours ago. The locals there have been very busy indeed. We had a fire and rescue team that was actually dispatched from Cairns here yesterday. They have gone further north to help the residents in Cooktown. One of the main threats from this immense weather system could be a possible storm surge, which could inundate around about 12 homes in Cooktown. So that fire and rescue unit are helping those residents prepare their homes and also to evacuate. And any resident in Cooktown can go to the PCYC centre, and they do have an evacuation centre there set up. We've also seen a little bit of rain coming in across the far north coast during this morning, but we are expecting the situation to worsen. Gales are forecast to develop from around about now at Cape Melville, and then they'll be spreading further down the coast as we get through this afternoon, affecting parts like Cooktown, Port Douglas and also Cairns. The last bit of advice I'm going to give is that these systems can be quite unpredictable and they can change their paths very quickly indeed. And that's why, Matt, it's very important for everyone to keep up to date with the latest warnings and information as it comes to hand.
Good advice. A very tense few hours ahead. Josh Holt live for us there in Cairns.
Well, let's cross live to Cairns now. Josh Holt joins us. Now, Josh, this storm approached the coast as a Category 5. It has since been downgraded. What's the latest you can tell us, and what's the difference between a 4 and a 5?
Hugh, good evening. It's still very much a powerful and immense system as a Category 4. We're seeing wind speeds near the centre of the cyclone at 230 kilometres per hour, which can cause substantial damage. In fact, we've just had reports from Cooktown that trees have now been uprooted. We've also had reports of structural damage, and the power is now also out. We've also had 100 millimetres worth of rainfall in a very short period of time. In fact, we're expecting 200 to 300 millimetres over the next 24 to 48 hours with sharp river rises and lots of flash flooding. Remember, if it's flooded, forget it. And the other big risk tonight is a possible storm surge in Cooktown as the rain begins to fall here in Cairns. And the storm surge is when the surface of the ocean gets pushed up against the foreshore, inundating those low-lying areas. So people in Cooktown could be affected by that. Now, we do anticipate that the system will move south through the inland, running parallel with the coast. Now, if it's close enough to the coast as it does so, it'll feast off moisture from the Coral Sea, and that could prove to be beneficial to this system, maintaining maintaining those winds as it makes its way towards Port Douglas and Cairns. But as darkness has now fallen across North Queensland, Hugh, all we can do is hope and wish everyone the best of luck.
Amen to that. Josh Holt, thank you.
And now to Cairns, where the wind and rain are really picking up. Josh Holt is there. Josh, what are the locals expecting?
Good evening, Mike. Well, Mother Nature is still unleashing her fury through far north Queensland. Tropical cyclone Ita, a Category 1 system, has now made a left-hand turn and is heading straight towards Cairns City, and it should pass overnight tonight. We're already getting wind speeds at well over 100 kilometres per hour, but the biggest threat will be the rainfall. Upwards of 300 millimetres already falling near Cooktown, over 200 millimetres near Cairns, and we are expecting a high tide here in Cairns at 7:52 p.m. tonight. Now, that will force water up the creeks and rivers, with a huge amount of water coming off the mountains. Now, that water has to go somewhere. It will begin to fan out, and that could inundate low-lying areas through Cairns City as we get through the next few hours. Now, Tropical Cyclone Ita is forecast to move back out into the Coral Sea, where we could possibly see a re-intensification over the next 24 hours. But Mike, we'll have further weather details live from Cairns coming up shortly.
OK, Josh, thanks again. We'll cross back to you later in the show. The true extent of the damage from Cyclone Ita won't be known for days, but as the weather system weakens, floodwaters are rising. Ingham near Townsville was inundated and cut off this morning when the Herbert River burst its banks. Josh Holt flew over the town and filed this report.
It's not until you get airborne above far north Queensland that you can really appreciate what Tropical Cyclone Ita has done and the trail of destruction that she leaves in towns like Ingham, which is just below me. Now, at the moment, we're seeing extensive floodwaters cut off the town to the north and south. In fact, police have been guarding those exit and entrance points to try and stop people entering those floodwaters. We've also got numerous properties that have been inundated, and like I said, it was all due to Tropical Cyclone Ita as she made her southerly track through the adjacent inland to the North Queensland coast. As she did so, she stayed close enough to the coast to tap into moisture from the Coral Sea and keep her cyclone strength. That enabled her to send in huge amounts of rainfall, upwards of 400 millimetres over the past 3 days, not only to the coastal fringe, but also through the adjacent inland, and that water is now making its way down the rivers and creeks, trying to force its way out to sea. It's also coincided with high tides, with water coming upstream, and therefore that water's got to go somewhere, and it begins to fan out. Now, the message has been very clear over the past few days. Emergency services have been stressing to everyone in far north Queensland, please do not attempt to drive, walk or ride through that floodwater. At this point, it's a logistical nightmare to get anywhere, especially for locals getting from point A to B, and for essential services and items to be driven into certain locations such as this. So even though it's frustrating, again, as the slogan says, please, if it's flooded, forget it.
Now, for the latest on Cyclone Ita's movements, we cross to our weather expert Josh Holt, who remains in the far north for us tonight. And Josh, I think it's fair to say northern Queensland has copped quite a drenching over the past few days.
Good evening, Georgie. We have seen an absolute deluge. Now, you may be able to hear that roar, that noise in behind me. So I'd like you to come on a journey with me now and take a trip to far north Queensland. Just have a look at that. That is Barron Falls, and these are live pictures as we go live to air tonight, with the Barron River descending off the Atherton tablelands, forcing its way down the waterfall, and eventually that water ends up in the Cairns Plateau and eventually moves out to sea. Now, that's the result of over 400 millimetres worth of rain in some parts of the state. Now, you can see the force of the water as it moves down off the rocks. It's cascading and lifting up a mist up into the air, and it just looks absolutely majestic and beautiful. And I can tell you the noise when you're right here is absolutely deafening. Now, we were above the falls yesterday in a helicopter, and the pilot has lived here all his life. He has told us he has never seen water move like that, and if you come here in the dry season, that is nothing but a trickle. But Georgie, we'll have all the layers from Tropical Cyclone Ita coming up shortly in the bulletin.
It's certainly spectacular. Thank you, Josh.